Chronic spontaneous urticaria, or chronic hives with no known cause. It's so unpredictable. It's like playing pinball. Itchy, red bumps start on my arm, then my back. Sometimes my legs. Hives come out of nowhere. And it comes and goes. But I just found out about a treatment option at treatmyhives.com. Take that, chronic hives. Learn more at treatmyhives.com.
10 years from today, Lisa Schneider will trade in her office job to become the leader of a pack of dogs. As the owner of her own dog rescue, that is. A second act made possible by the reskilling courses Lisa's taking now with AARP to help make sure her income lives as long as she does. And she can finally run with the big dogs and the small dogs who just think they're big dogs. That's why the younger you are, the more you need AARP. Learn more at aarp.org/skills.
BTW FYI. Visit Nexplanon.com RN to learn about Nexplanon. It's an adjustable implant, 68 milligrams radio pain. Or ask your HCP IRL. Okay, TTYL.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. No chuckle there, Kieran, because you didn't count it. We had to record something briefly before we did this, and you did the comedy countdown, and it was a very serious thing we had to record, so I've been suppressing the chuckle, and now I feel that the chuckle can't come out, so it's set the tone for a serious questions pod here today.
A questions pod with no football discussion. We hasten to add.
No football. Was there any games? Were there games at the weekend? I didn't see any games at the weekend. Yeah, so we'll wait till the table sorted itself out before we start talking about the football. All this nonsense with Bournemouth and Sunderland in the top four. We'll let nature rectify that terrible error. We'll wait till Palace are 12th and you're 9th, and then we'll start talking about football again. Although the way things are going, it won't be long before we might be passing 12th and the way further down. Never mind. It is Questions Day, Kieran. We do have some big Nor story. So, subconsciously, I was going to say big noise, because these are such big stories. They are massive news stories, Kieran. Sheffield Wednesday, I generally don't know, Kieran, whether this is the crisis has arrived or the crisis has been diverted. Certainly, Sheffield Wednesday fans were celebrating on Saturday as though a house had just fallen on the Wicked Witch.
Yes, this is the least worst outcome as far as Sheffield Wednesday Football Club is concerned. And I think in previous episodes, we discussed the three potential options, which was A, Dejon Shansiri magically finding an awful lot of money under the sofa, which we thought was very, very remote. B, a successful winding up order, which would have resulted in the liquidation of the club. That was in nobody's interests, including HMRC, because there was nothing to sell. And C, going into administration. So I think the actions of the Sheffield Wednesday fans have accelerated the appointment of administrators. It was very evident from anybody who saw the pictures from their home match against Middlesbrough on the last Wednesday night that the fans were campaigning via non-attendance. Now, many Owls fans will of course have bought season tickets, and they therefore are making a sacrifice. And you might say, well, Shansiri's already got the money, but he wasn't getting anything from catering. He wasn't getting anything from merchandise. So there was at least that boycott, and there were hardly any walk-up fans as well. So that did put additional pressure on Shansiri. The HMRC winding up order was certainly mooted to be applied on Friday. And in addition, the wages were due to be paid this week. And there was no indication as to whether he could find the money to pay the wages. So Begbie's have been appointed as the administrators. They were previously the administrators of Wigan Athletic. I think they've also had some other football clubs, and they've also been involved, I think, with Worcester Warriors. So it is an industry with which they're familiar. Having said that, in my view, any good firm of administrators would be equally proficient at doing the job. So what does this mean? Well, in footballing terms, there's an immediate 12-point deduction which has been applied. This was originally introduced as a rule to stop those clubs who had owners who were gaming the system by putting a club into administration, buying it back from the administrator with just the assets and none of the debts. Can't say who those people are. I think just look it up. And that's what's known as a pre-pack administration, whereby you do your homework, you find a buyer before you're formally appointed, and there's a relatively smooth transition. The company, the football club, is in administration for a matter of minutes, and that allows things to continue, but it means that HMRC gets stiffed, it means that local suppliers get stiffed, and so on. So under the EFL rules, Begbie's have got to, they cannot formally sell the club within 28 days. But I think that's unlikely anyway, given that a new owner would have to pass the EFL owners and directors test, and we know that takes a wee bit of time. The big issue is the club needs cash. And again, fair play to all those Wednesday fans who came in, bought tickets, they bought merchandise, they spent more money on catering and so on. And I think there was a general upbeat feeling. And I can absolutely understand that, because they've still got a Sheffield Wednesday to support, and you're not seen to be supporting Dejan Chansiri, who's become a very toxic person. There are downsides. Creditors will get stiffed on this, there's no doubt about that. The biggest creditor to Sheffield Wednesday Football Club, ironically, is Dejan Chansiri. In the 2024 accounts, he was owed around about £61 million, and that was after putting in £10 million into the club in 23-24. He now has two choices. He could do what I would consider to be the decent thing, and what happens with the administrators is they write to everybody who is owed money, and they say, can you confirm how much you are owed? And they'll try to reconcile that to the club's accounts, and then they'll agree a figure. In the case of Derby County, Mel Morris, who had many faults in terms of his conduct as an owner of the club, he magnanimously said, I'm owed £200 million by Derby County Football Club, but because I don't want it to have a further points deduction, and if you pay less than 25 pence in the pound to creditors when you leave, you have an extra 15-point penalty upon exit. And that might be applied this season. It might be applied in 26-27, depending upon when the sale takes place. So Mel Morris wrote off that £200 million. That meant that the administrators could sell the club for a much lower price, still get 25 pence in the pound, which meant that Derby County didn't suffer a second points deduction. So that's what we've got to deal with. So it will have cost the taxpayer money. It will have cost local suppliers money, and a time when cash flows are tight. So that's the sad thing. What the administrators will now do is that they will effectively act as a glorified estate agent. They'll take photographs that say, this is what we've got to sell. Most important of which is the share in the English Football League Limited. And on the back of that, they will go through, they will do some due diligence in terms of the prospective owners, and that one of the administrators was on 5 Live this morning, says they've already got 5 sort of serious bidders. The danger with football clubs is that football clubs attract clowns. So tire kickers, fantasists, lunatics, people who want some self-publicity, they are attracted, and it gives them the opportunity to potentially to go on TalkSport, to speak to the local Sheffield press, and so on. Some of these people aren't credible, but the job of the administrator is to sort out the wheat from the chaff. So that's where we are at present. Wages are due, I think, this Friday, because that'll be the 31st of October. It's now up to the administrators to generate cash as quickly as they can. I think they they generated at least £250,000, perhaps £500,000 worth of cash at the weekend. Is that enough to pay the wages? I'm not certain. Could some players or some other senior people defer wages for a month? I guess that's up for negotiation. So that's where we are. And I'm sorry I've gone on a bit there.
No, not at all. It's very important to clarify this, but it still leaves a couple of things for me to clarify, if you don't mind, Kieran. So I think Sheffield Wednesday fans would like me to do. And first of all, congratulations to those Sheffield Wednesday fans, because it showed whoever it buys the club, it shows them that the fan base wants to get behind it and wants to spend the money to help. I think I'm not sure the exact figure that was spent on new shirts, but it was an incredible amount. And there's a great photograph of the queues around the club shop and the queues around the ticket shop as well. So that's a handy reminder to anyone, as I say, who wants to buy that club. Please God, it's not John Textor. He seems to have turned the eye of Sauron onto Wolves this morning. So let's park that one for the moment. Just in terms of Chansiri, can you answer these questions in whichever order you like, Kieran? Because you tend to go rogue anyway, whatever order I ask you the questions in. First of all, how much are the waters muddied by the fact that Chansiri still owns the ground? Secondly, what does happen if they pay the wages this month, but then they can't pay the wages next month? What happens there? And that which leads me on to saying, can you remind us of the pecking order of who gets paid first, basically, whether it's 25 pence in the pound or whatever? Because I would have thought the staff should be first. And just in terms of Begbie, are these companies like Begbie solely administrators, or are they firms of accountants who also do administration on the side? So we're talking about actual specialists here.
Right. You raise a really good issue about the stadium. The good news, because this was something that I was fearing, is that Sheffield 3 Limited, which is the company which owns the stadium, has also gone into administration, and Begbie's are the administrators there. So therefore, they can put it together as a whole package, in effect. Again, this was another issue relating to Derby County. Mel Morris put Derby County Football Club into administration, but he didn't put the stadium company into administration, which allowed him to act like Caesar and give the final thumbs up or thumbs down. And I was contacted by somebody fairly senior who said there was another credible offer, another credible bidder for Derby County, but Mel Morris didn't like him, and therefore you can be awkward in terms of, well, I'm not going to sell you the ground for a discounted price.
So does this mean then, Kieran, that Dejan Chansiri is out of the picture completely at Sheffield Wednesday?
Absolutely, and I think that is fantastic news.
Right, great.
That's something. And look, I've never met the guy, never spoken to the guy. He could help hold little old ladies across the road, but in terms of being a football owner, he was absolutely terrible. So I think he is best completely out of the equation. So that was the first of your question. You rightly then say, well, okay, we're going to have this surge of goodwill and so on as far as the October wages are concerned. And again, listening to the administrators, they sounded quite perky this morning on the radio in terms of the wages being paid for October. But you then move into November. If you take a look at Sheffield Wednesday's wage bill, it is quite sizable. It's more than £1 million a month. Sorry about that.
It's all right. Is that an alarm you've missed? Are you supposed to be on TalkSport?
No, it's a phone call and my ringtone is the theme tune to the film Halloween, because it is Halloween week.
It is.
And also, if anybody, I'm a huge John Carpenter fan, and I've even seen him do gigs because he used to write all the music for his films. Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, Assault on Precinct 13. It wasn't Pelham 3, and so on. Yeah, I was a huge. Well, I still am. John Carpenter groupie.
All I will say, Kieran, passing over the fact that you've already been on Radio 5 at, I believe, 5 o'clock this morning. Your poor Catholic mother would be horrified to hear you were so obsessed with Halloween, Kieran.
It's a birthday today as well.
Is it?
Yes.
Halloween week.
Halloween week. Yes.
That's not remotely significant. Crack on, Kieran.
Yeah, sorry. So as far as November wages are concerned, it now all comes down to cash flow. So what can the administrators sell, assuming that Chansiri is not going to give any financial support, which I assume is to be the case? What is he going to have to do? He's going to have to try to sell off stuff. Now, one of the things that they could do is they could forward sell some players as far as the January window is concerned. So that could be academy players or players who are not registered and so on, and they could generate some cash. I mean, certainly that's the approach which they took at Wigan.
Yeah.
And you go on from there. Is there anything else to sell? I'm not sure in terms of the other real estate or the other bits and pieces, but they will be looking anything which is not a necessity at the football club is at risk of being sold. One other thing they could do, and this is again, the administration is the least worst option.
Yeah,
is it does mean that jobs are on the line.
Yeah,
so they will be doing an assessment, and it's not personal. Having done the role myself, it's a horrible thing to do. One of the reasons why I got out of it is that I just didn't have the personality for it. I'm just not geared.
You're too nice. Way. You're too nice.
Too soft.
Too soft. Too nice. Yeah.
Whereas my ex-wife never bothered her in the least. And that's not a criticism of her. She was just far more sensible person than me.
It's a veiled criticism of her, Kieran. I think if you say someone's quite happy to sack people on Christmas Eve, I mean I'm interpolating Christmas Eve, Kieran, but if someone's quite happy to do the full Bill Murray sacking people Christmas Eve, then that's for me that's a veiled criticism. Yeah.
So that's where we are in terms of wages, and then your third question was the priority of security. First of all, are there any secured loans? Yes, there is. There's one from New Avenue Projects Limited. That's secured on the stadium. Now, again, at the end of 2024, that was around about 7.4 million. I think there may have been further interest on that loan, which will have rolled up. So we could be talking around about 8 million plus for that. Then it will be the employees. If there's any outstanding wages, they will become a preferred creditor. The money due to the costs of the administration comes above all of that.
Of course.
How much is that going to be? Again, if we benchmark against the likes of Wigan and Derby County, you're probably talking about a fee from Begbie's of around about £2 million and additional costs of up to another 2 million. Legal costs, estate agents' costs, they might be using agents, and so on. So it is an expense. So all of that money is coming out of the pot that eventually goes to the unsecured creditors. HMRC, in theory, step come in sort of around about just below the employees or just alongside the employees. And then after that, you've got the unsecured creditors. And in theory, after that, you've got the shareholders, which is his Chansiri. Now, he's got about £60 million worth of shares. He's going to get none of that.
Yeah.
I think for me, the big issue is he going to put in a claim against the company? My gut reaction is that he will, because I'm not sure what else he's got. That means that I think it increases the chances of a 15-point penalty on exit. If the new owners don't offer a huge amount, and therefore they end up paying less than 25 pence in the pound to the unsecured creditors, or strictly less than 35 pence in the pound over a 3-year period, then there will be a further penalty in the form of a 15-point deduction. My understanding from senior sources is that would be applied for 2026, 2027. It is conceivably at the discretion of the EFL. So somebody coming in would have to take that into account when agreeing a final fee for the club, because there's a high chance of Wednesday being relegated this season. You don't want to start off in League One at -15. We have seen some similar issues historically, and I think for big clubs, -15 is not insurmountable, but you combine that with the transfer restrictions that the club have, it would make it very difficult to bounce back straight away.
And let me just confirm, and I've thought of another question, Kieran. So Begbie's are full-time, their role is administration.
Yeah. They are. Sorry, you did ask that question. Yeah. Yes. Many firms of administrators have an insolvency department, so you will have specialist staff. So when I was employed by Grant Thornton, I worked in the insolvency department, and I wasn't involved in tax, I wasn't involved in audit, I just did specialist work on insolvency work.
Right, okay.
And you then get some sort of breakout firms who just say, well, we're not interested in doing anything else apart from administrative work. It takes a certain type of person. One of the administrators, for example, at Wigan, he was the guy that said they should build a statue of him.
Yes, I know.
He's and nobody else could have done the job as good as him. It takes a certain type of ego, I think, to do the job.
It's never occurred to me before, Kieran, that you need a massive ego to be a comedian and an administrator. I'm sure Begbie's are very good, but
they are.
There will be Sheffield Wednesday fans raising their eyebrows at the fact that they're charging about 4 months' wages for doing this, basically. If you're talking about possibly £4 million heading Begbie's way, which is a lot of money in the circumstances. Just before we finish, Kieran, and I think it's in... I don't want to urinate on anybody's parade, Kieran, or indeed their chips. But I think it's important to say that the least worst option, this is not good, essentially. I mean, it's the boil has been lanced and it is the first step in the right direction, but there will be some short-term pain. I speak from experience.
Yes.
This is the trouble. This is what Sheffield Wednesday fans need to know, that it's going to hurt in the next couple of weeks. That there may well be people they know losing their jobs and so on, but in the long term, this is the best thing that could have happened. Just to clarify, though, there's no chance, is there, that they could sell the ground and the club to separate? If somebody came along and said, "I'll tell you what, I'm not particularly interested in running a football club, but I'd love to take this ground on," I mean, you'd be suspicious about their motives. Is that a possibility?
It is feasible, yes, because Begbie's statutory obligations are towards the creditors of the companies. So if we had a separation of football stadium and football club, and that generated more in terms of a selling price, then they would be duty bound to explore that. I think that anybody wanting to buy the football club wouldn't want to do so unless they had either ownership of the football stadium or a long-term rental agreement at a competitive rent, in which case, why buy the football stadium itself? Yeah.
I'm going to pause here, Kieran, to just tell you and our listeners that history has got it wrong when it comes to Roman emperors, the thumbs up, the thumbs down.
Oh.
The thumbs down actually meant survival.
Oh.
Because the thumbs down meant put the sword or the weapon back into the scabbard or into the ground. The thumbs up meant stick it where it hurts.
Oh,
basically.
That's fascinating.
Yes, it is, isn't it? I mean, it's too late now. I mean, 2,000 years of cultural baggage is pointless. But when somebody gives me
football, come for the administration, stay for the scabbards details. I think this is fantastic.
People get really bored when I say, people give me the thumbs up signal, and I go, well, actually, is this good news or bad news? And they go, what?
If you've shopped online, chances are you've bought from a business powered by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see at checkout? The one that makes buying so incredibly easy? That's Shopify. And there's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes it incredibly easy to start and run your business. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/promo. Go to shopify.com/promo.
This episode is sponsored by Shopify. When we started The Price of Football and things started to take off, it all got a bit overwhelming at times as we were suddenly sorting out recordings, interviews, live shows, and our online store. When you're starting off with something new, it seems like your to-do list keeps growing every day with new tasks, and that list can easily begin to overrun your life. Finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify.
Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started. With Shopify, you get your own design studio that includes hundreds of ready-to-use templates. You can accelerate your content creation with Shopify's AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. And you can easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify.
Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for a £1 per month trial period at shopify.co.uk/priceoffootball, all lowercase. So go to shopify.co.uk/priceoffootball to take your business to the next level today. That's shopify.co.uk/priceoffootball. We do have two more news stories, Kieran, which we have to mention, but I'm aware that we've spent a lot of time already on Sheffield Wednesday and we've got questions to ask. So perhaps if we don't go into as much detail on this, but we spoke last weekend with some dismay at the fact that La Liga and the Spanish press had almost completely tried to obscure the players' demonstrations about the proposed game in Miami. But nevertheless, the players have had their way, Kieran.
Yes, a very strange timing for the announcement because it was during
shocking timing
during a match was taking place.
Yeah,
and a very terse pronouncement. Relevant Sports, who are the organisation tasked by Tebas with trying to boost the profile of La Liga, put out a press release to say the match ain't taking place. And we've not got enough time to organise it. Well, they must have known that from day one.
Yeah.
So that clearly is got the spidey senses twitching. It would appear that Real Madrid were opposed to it because they felt it gave an advantage to Barcelona, and as we saw in El Clasico last night, just how feisty those two teams are towards each other. When there was the equivalent of an El Clasico in the United States, I think they generated 20 million in gate receipts from one match, which is incredible. So that's why La Liga wanted to do it. But player power, opposition from other clubs, there was no real enthusiasm for it, except Tebas has got one of the many chips on his shoulder about it. So yes, well played to everybody involved.
La Liga denying it's about money, Kieran. This is very interesting. So La Liga was saying this whole process is to raise the profile of La Liga around the world going forward, because that's important in order to compete with broadcasting. So they're kind of disguising the fact it's about the money.
Absolutely.
Barcelona, I almost admired the Barcelona press release, which said we would have been making money from the moment we sat down on the airplane. And we're actually rather cross about the amount of money that we're losing. So at least they were honest about the fact it's to do with money. Guillem Balaguer, who's a fantastic broadcaster and, of course, one of the world's experts on Spanish football, his view is rather wearily. He said this fire is out, but there'll be another one popping out. And he said it's a matter of time. They will get their way in the end. They might have to go in, he said, with a lost leader with two mid-table teams. But for the moment, it's gone away. Thank God. I still think this is potentially one of the most dangerous stories we've ever dealt with. But it's gone away for the moment. But it is for the moment. We know that, Kieran. And finally, talking of points deduction, it's happened to Hamilton Academical as well, Kieran.
Yes, they've been given a 6-point deduction and fined £22,000. They've been paying trialists, and they've been fielding amateur players whilst they're under a transfer embargo. I managed to get a call from somebody who I can only describe as the secret academical. And he or she said, not surprised. The club is technically insolvent. It is being funded by a third party. The club, the owner has bought the club, but not the stadium. I think they're playing in front of hardly any fans. They're not playing at the home ground. They've had to move elsewhere. So we have covered them before. So it is an absolute mess. I believe that there's an outstanding issue with regards to a sell-on clause from a player, and where's the money gone from that? It just seems an almighty mess, and a classic example of lack of governance at an individual company can have huge ramifications. So there has been a football consequence as a result of that.
I just want to clear one thing up, Kieran. The problem is they've been paying trialists, not playing trialists. I wanted to make sure.
Yes,
this was because of course you can play as many trialists as you want, but they've been actually bunging them a bit of money to play for them.
Yes, and I think that's due to this was a way of trying to get around the transfer embargo.
All right, well, that's a story we'll obviously be keeping an eye on. Let's get into questions then, Kieran. And the first one comes from Alex Dobson, and it's a very interesting one. It seems to be a straightforward one, Kieran, and it probably is for you, but I'll tell you afterwards why I find it interesting. And Alex Dobson says, I have a question regarding discounts when player trading. As is common in industry, businesses will offer discount terms when it comes to repayment on goods and services if they meet certain criteria, with the main focus being time-based. For example, a 10% discount for paying within 7 days. Does this happen in the football industry? Would clubs say to each other, if they meet repayment terms quicker, then there will be a discount? For example, say Club X bought player A for £10 million from Club Y, and they agreed to a 5-year payment plan of £2 million a year. Then say Club X paid £3 million in the first 3 years. Could then a discount be applied to the player sale? Could clubs then use this as a bargaining tactic when it comes to selling players to get either money quicker or a bigger fee? Now, the reason I found this so interesting, Kieran, is it reminded me for the first time in several years that there are other ways of buying and selling footballers than amortisation. Because the idea that you could say, I'll tell you what, we'll pay you 10 million quid now and 10 million quid next year, or all of it up front for a discount, completely slipped my memory. Because it seems that every deal is amortised. To the extent that my initial reaction to this is that a club would only want an amortised payment. They wouldn't, for various reasons, cash up front or a discount for cash up front wouldn't be what they wanted, which seems to be a complete turnaround for how business should run.
Right, I think you raised some valid points here. Regardless of the cash flow, as far as an individual transfer is concerned, amortisation is a separate issue. If you sign a player for £10 million on a 4-year contract, it's £2.5 million a year amortisation. Now, that could be, even if you pay £10 million up front, or you pay money over a period of time. But what Alex does bring into question is the fact that at the elite end of football, practically every deal is dealt with on a deferred payment basis. So if we take a look at the accounts of Manchester United, I've got the figures here. Manchester United, at the end of 2024, I think this was, they owed at the time, according to the books, they owed £331 million to other clubs, but that was the discounted amount. They actually owed 362, and the difference between the two, that £31 million difference between the two, is interest. So I think what Alex is saying is the right thing. If I wanted to sell, let's say you own a football club, I own a football club, I'm selling to you, I'm going to you. I think he's, normal terms is 3 years. I want £30 million for the player. 10 million now, 10 million next year, 10 million in 2 years. And what you say to me is, hold on, I'll offer you 27 million now. And I go, I'll take it. So the difference between the two would be the interest. So that's what people do in the real world. And when you see the interest costs in the accounts of football clubs, it's the difference between if we paid 100% of the fee immediately or the deferred payment terms. And we call this an imputed rate of interest, and it's nerd heaven because different clubs use different rates. When I talk to different clubs, some of them will say, well, it's 6.5%, some of them will say it's 8.5%. And again, it's one of those areas where potentially you can do a bit of manipulation of the numbers. It's quite similar to what our friends at Macquarie do when, let's say that you've sold a player on credit and you've got 2 IOUs sat in your desk. They might be for £20 million, 10 million next year, 10 million in 2 years. And Macquarie will then come in and say, tell you what, we'll give you 17 now, take it or leave it. And you go, how desperately do you need the 17 million? So there are certainly interest implications in all transfers. And I can't remember, I think it might have been, it was either it's a strange, weird, this one. It was either Mike Ashley or Roman Abramovich. They always used to pay 100% up front because they preferred to take that cash discount now. And because they were so wealthy, they could afford to do that. So you do see different behavioural traits coming from different football clubs. And that ultimately is determined by the owner.
If I ran a football club, Kieran, and you ran a football club, you'd run rings around me. I'd have the fans battering them. There'd be protests around my house after 2 weeks. You'd be the Tony Bloom in that situation. It must have been cold in Edinburgh yesterday because he was tucked up against the weather.
Very, very nice scarf.
Yeah, it was lovely, wasn't it? It was interesting to hear the commentator and the co-commentator singing his praises because already they seem to think of him as a disruptor in Scottish football, don't they? And they certainly deserved to win that game yesterday.
It was. I mean, clearly you have a semi-vested interest because you're curious as to whether the Tony Bloom algorithm is transferable. Well, if we take a look at 3 other clubs that have used it, Ipswich Town used it in League One in the Championship, and they were promoted ultimately to the Premier League. They didn't use it in the Premier League because he is a very strict 1 club, 1 division rule. And I think there's another club in the Premier League, which is his priority. Grimsby Town used it at the start of this season, and they're flying high, and they've beaten Manchester United in the Carabao Cup. And Heart of Midlothian have used it in the Scottish Premiership. And if you take a look at the players that they've signed, it's from Latvia, it's from Iceland, and so on. You go, this is an incredibly comprehensive database of talent, and it appears to be working. Long time to go in football, but it's fascinating as an observer to see what's taken place to date.
You did well to negotiate that small detour without mentioning Brighton once, but you'll be mentioning at the end of the pod, Kieran, hopefully with some good news, I believe.
I will indeed, yes.
Paul Upton has our next question. And Paul Upton has it. It's a very short question, Kieran, but I imagine for you, it's hours of happy work. Paul Upton says, is it possible to work out which club has made the most from sell-on clauses in the last year or another sensible time period?
I think that is... it is the club that sold Enzo Fernandez to Chelsea because they bought... Was it Benfica? I think it was Benfica. Benfica bought him from a Brazilian club for around about 10 million before the World Cup. Then he had a successful World Cup. Then he went to Chelsea for what was a then record fee of 110 million. And the Brazilian club, I can't read my own notes here, I think they had a 20% sell-on clause. So they made £20 million on a £10 million sale. So their add-on was bigger than the original fee for which they generated from Fernandes. Looking at some others, I think Chelsea actually did quite well themselves because from the sale of Kevin De Bruyne. Because they sold him relatively cheaply. He then went to Manchester City for 55 million, and again, they're at 10 to 15%. Bournemouth, I think Bournemouth sold Adam Lallana to Southampton for £200,000 because he was caught under the elite player performance plan, but they had a sell-on clause. He went to Liverpool. Raheem Sterling, that was another big one for QPR because Liverpool sold him at a profit. So I've not got it necessarily for the last year because the data isn't given in detail, but these are sort of anecdotally some of the biggest ones. And we are certainly seeing in the current market a huge shift towards sell-on clauses because it does provide some protection. And also, from the buying club might say, well, if it doesn't work out, we don't have to hand any more money across. And also it allows us to buy the player for a cheaper fee up front as well. So you share in the gain and you share in the pain.
This next question, Kieran, comes from Daniel Nethercote. And it's a very good question. It's a very interesting question. But I have to admit, Kieran, I thought long and hard before deciding whether to ask it. And I think you'll understand when I do ask it, when I say 2 years ago, I probably wouldn't have asked it because the people involved are not the real victims. So, yeah. But I think it is. I think it is only fair to ask it, and it's. I'll be interested in the answer. But Daniel Nethercote says, with the ongoing war in Ukraine, meaning the indefinite banning of Russian clubs from European competitions, what is the current financial landscape for Russian teams and league organisers themselves? If at all knowable, how will the teams have adjusted financially to the loss of income from UEFA competitions? Is it simply a case of the entire structure being propped up by the government because, well, says Daniel, this is all kind of their fault? Which is, it's hard. I'm trying to see them as football clubs, Kieran, and football clubs in trouble, but it's hard to generate sympathy for them. But I do think it is a reasonable question.
It is a very reasonable question, Daniel. I went to the UEFA European Club Financial Landscape Report, which is one of my go-to documents. I suspect I may be alone in that as a holiday read, but for me, it's fascinating, and I think this will surprise the vast majority of listeners to The Price of Football. The Russian Football Federation, even during a war scenario, is the sixth biggest in Europe. So you've got England, followed by Spain, Germany, Italy, France, and then Russia. On the face of it, and this is where the figures start to get interesting, because as Daniel rightly points out, Russian clubs are not generating any revenue from UEFA competition, which can be incredibly lucrative, as Crystal Palace are finding out themselves. As far so. It is a beneficial place to be, especially for clubs from the non-Big Five nations. If we take a look at the gate receipts for all of the clubs in the Russian Premier League, they came to £52 million. That's probably equivalent to what West Ham are generating. So they're not making a lot of money. As far as attendances are concerned, attendances pre-COVID were averaging 17,000. Pretty solid, not decent. That certainly has dropped. It's now around about 12 to 13,000, but it is sort of nudging up over the last 2 to 3 years. And that's despite Vladimir Putin sending somewhere between 80 to 100,000 young Russian men to their death for his war. That's my political statement of the day. I then went into the figures in more depth. Okay, this doesn't seem to add up because the domestic TV deal is not worth very much. The gate receipts are not worth very much. Where's the money coming from? The money is coming from commercial. So it's from sponsors. Now, there is a blurring between state and private companies as far as Russia is concerned. So, as an outside observer, I would say that there is effectively state funding through opaque lines. And Russia, again, I can speak with not authority, but with experience. Russia is an opaque country. Russia is an institutionally corrupt country. And I've got experience of that myself. So the money is coming in from the lines. And people might say, well, why is that? It's because as far as Putin's regime is concerned, what they want to do is to project to the country that things are just running as normal. We've still got football clubs to play against. We've still got trains. We've still got planes. And so on. So it is part of the broader propaganda as far as the Russian state is concerned. But that is how it's operating. The clubs are, again, if I look at the club financial report, the clubs would appear to be profitable. They're only paying 60% of revenue as wages. Are they still attracting players from overseas? Yeah, they are. There's still a few Brazilian lads who go to Russia. Yeah.
Our penultimate question, Kieran, comes from Ian Smith. And if anybody from Manchester City's legal department is listening, I wish to stress that I am quoting Ian Smith's question here. Other opinions are available. Ian Smith is almost, if it was John Smith, I'd say he knows what he's doing and he's not putting his real name down. But Ian Smith says, taking into account Manchester City's well-documented lack of cooperation with their financial fair play investigation so far, and their view that they have breached the rules they consider to be not fair, is it possible that not only a points deduction could be issued, but also a PSR reduction over X number of future seasons based on the financial value of the overspending during the investigation period? Now, regardless of the value judgments Ian Smith is making here, Kieran, I don't think that's an option we've discussed when we have discussed on our live shows and on the pod potential outcomes of the never-ending Manchester City inquiry, which is reaching Dickensian bleak house levels of time. But the idea that perhaps a PSR figure could be adjusted as a punishment if they're found guilty or not is an interesting one, Kieran, is it not?
It is. The Commission has an open palette as far as sanctions should Manchester City be found guilty, and it has to be stressed, innocent until proved otherwise. We saw when Manchester City and PSG were found guilty of breaches of UEFA's financial rules, that they were then subject to a wage cap and a form of a transfer embargo, which covered a period of 2 to 3 years going forwards. So this is a quasi way of having an impact upon future PSR. Ian probably wrote this question before it looked like PSR is on the way out and it's going to be replaced by some form of replicate of the rules of UEFA. So we await to see. But certainly, Ian, we don't know what the consequences will be, apart from they will be seismic, regardless of which party is successful. I think there will be certainly implications for senior executives. So that's where we stand. As far as will we get an answer this side of Christmas, I'm not convinced one way or the other. It is very much a coin toss.
Yeah. Sorry, you're suggesting they're tossing a coin for each of the 115 charges.
It would have been a lot cheaper.
It would have been much cheaper certainly for the Premier League. Ben Archer has our last question, Kieran, and it's an interesting one. Interesting as well. I know we've got a long waiting list, so it is coincidence, but the Australian League is starting to crop up on a fairly regular basis, Kieran, and very rarely in a positive way. So Ben Archer says, As an Aston Villa fan based in Australia, I've been marvelling at the rise of my team's fortunes on the pitch and the price gouging of fans off the pitch. By contrast, I've been seeing many teams here in our A-League keep prices the same as crowd numbers dwindle and interest wanes. Villa fans in the UK are calling for Villa Park to be rebuilt, in part or in full, to maintain prices while taking pressure off the facilities, especially when the urinals overflow, which is probably a detail we didn't need. However, down here, we have many fans calling for their clubs to move to smaller stadiums because the atmosphere is akin to an episode of Blue Peter. Well, remember that baby elephant? Yeah, the Blue Peter urinals would have been. Is there a magic formula or equation that allows for clubs to have that sweet spot of maximum profit between ticket sales and stadium size? I mean, first of all, the idea of fans wanting to move to a smaller stadium is almost counterintuitive, but it's a great question in the end from Ben, that sweet spot between ticket sales and stadium size.
I think it's a very valid question as well. Football in Australia is struggling for viewers, for people attending, and that's due to the success of other sports. You know, Aussie rules, I've got no idea what the rules are, but it's a fast sport. It's clearly, it's a bit like GAA in Ireland. Yeah. It squeezes out the other sports. And I think if it's part of local culture, it's to be applauded. It does therefore mean that football is a minority sport, and as far as the A-League is concerned, and there are problems and complications with the A-League, which perhaps we should save for another show. I think it's a bit of a mess as an outside observer. It's a tricky one. When I teach sort of bog standard business economics, price and volume is a discussion that we spend a lot of time on. And what I mean by that is, where do you pitch the right price? Because if I put prices up by 10% and sales fall by 20%, I'm worse off. And every business on the planet is constantly in the back of its mind going through that particular equation. You don't want to undersell your product by if you get the prices too low and you get big attendances. If you then put the prices up, people will leave. So and vice versa. So there is no definitive answer, Ben, as to where the appropriate point is. But I can assure you, many boardrooms and many spreadsheets, it has to also be said, are taken up with trying to get this correct.
Well, also, Kieran, I have to say many comedians, many theatres, many agents, because if you're looking at Edinburgh, for example, or if you're looking to, I organise a benefit at the Comedy Store every year for the Lily Foundation. Is that, again, we've historically charged a low price because it's become a social event, but we know we'll always sell it out. And then you think, well, can we raise more money by adding a tenner to the ticket price? But then we won't sell it out. Same with Edinburgh. How much do you charge in the hope that you will sell that venue out? And because it gets more and more expensive to put theatre shows on and comedy shows on every year. And the word business is involved in show business.
Exactly.
So people want to make money. So it isn't just football, but it's someone has got the answer out there somewhere. Someone will be going, they'll be working out and going, 24,500, I reckon, at £18 a ticket. And then Kieran Maguire will go, no, you'll just get a cigarette packet and do some, gently go wrong. And then you'll go on 5 Live at 5:15 in the morning. Why were you on 5 Live at? I just need to tell people, I just casually mentioned, so could we start 15 minutes earlier Monday morning? Oh, got it. Yeah, start when you want. I'm on 5 Live at 5:15.
Well, this is how I met producer Guy.
I know. Let's not get into that, because we'll start putting the Simon Bates sad music underneath. Start telling that story. I take it you were talking about Sheffield Wednesday, Kieran, were you?
Well, yes, I was supposed to be talking about Sheffield Wednesday, and I'm not seeing my arse here. They phoned me up at the last minute and said, we managed to get one of the administrators to do an interview instead. Sod off.
Oh, well, that's
fine. That's showbiz.
Yeah, you missed out on upwards of £35 for an appearance fee there, Kieran.
I don't get paid a penny.
No, I know you don't. No one does. That was just jibing. Thank you to everyone who's joined the Price of Football Club. If you'd like to join the club too and get every episode a day earlier than everyone else, ad-free listening, and invite to our monthly Q&A sessions, bonus episodes and more, go to our website, priceoffootball.com. If you have a question you'd like answered on our weekly question show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter, you can find us on YouTube, and if you'd like to buy one of our books or even the Price of Football t-shirt, go back to that website. You'll find all the details, priceoffootball.com. We'll be back on Thursday with our news pod. There's already a couple of big stories gestating, I believe is the right word for that. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell, and I'm hoping a bit of a good news announcement, Kieran.
Yes, absolutely delighted to confirm that we now have 2 guests for our Price of Football Live that Kevin and I are presenting at the Amex Stadium at the Terrace on Wednesday, the 19th of November. Chief Commercial Officer Russ Wood is coming on, and we had their C-level suite guys last year, and it is fascinating to find the commercial side of a football club is something which can generate an awful lot of extra interest and revenue for a club. But also, and this is where we are getting it, honestly, Russ is a very good guest. We are slightly giddy at the prospect. We can now confirm Glenn Murray, the great man himself, as far as the contributions to both our clubs being promoted, is going to be a guest on the show. Where I'm absolutely made up. But on a more serious matter, the reason why we're doing this gig is that all of the proceeds are going to the Samaritans. It's part of the Premier League are doing a fantastic thing this season. They are supporting suicide awareness for the 25-26 season. And Brighton and Hove Samaritans, it costs £165 a day to run their operation. So we are therefore, going back to our most recent topic, we're charging £16.50 a ticket. Plus there'll be a booking fee. But if you go to Eventbrite, or if you take a look at my or Kevin's Twitter feed, you'll be able to find one of the links there. It's a great show, and I'm not saying that because I'm looking at him on the screen. I've never seen Kevin better than when he's got a bunch of Brighton fans in front of him and he's got the microphone. Talk about being on fire.
I'm just making a mental note. Commercial manager, quinoa, how many times can I mention? Yes, we'd love to see you there if you're in that area, and it is for a very good cause, and it was a good gig last year, and it's going to be even better this year. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.